As the 1950s gave way to the 1960s, many of Hollywood's Western stars would hang up their guns. Charles Starrett and Tim Holt had already left the movies. Randolph Scott and Joel McCrea would retire after 1962's Ride the High Country. Some, like Rod Cameron, Roy Calhoun, and George Montgomery, would head to TV, or to the Philippines, or to Spain to make Italian westerns. Audie Murphy is one of the only, maybe the only, cowboy star of the 50s who kept making American theatrical westerns into the 60s. Murphy's contract with Universal International kept him in the saddle through 1966's Gunpoint, and with each film he made, the studio devoted less money and less promotion to it. Between those Universals, and after that contract ran out, Murphy was free to make whatever he wanted. And he made pictures for independent companies that were released by Allied Artists, Columbia, and 20th Century Fox. One of those independent outfits was Admiral Productions, run by producer and editor Grant Wytock. Veteran producer Edward Small was a silent partner and money man at Admiral. Screenwriter Robert E. Kent, who'd written B-movies at RKO and was part of Sam Katzman's unit at Columbia, was also part of Admiral. Murphy made 4 westerns for Admiral Productions: The Quick Gun and Apache Rifles, both released in 1964, with Arizona Raiders coming in 1965, and finally 40 Guns to Apache Pass in 1967. Murphy would only make one more movie after that one. Apache Rifles seems to be a remake of Indian Uprising, a Columbia Western from 1952 starring George Montgomery. Apache Rifles was originally called Apache Uprising, and it was written by Charles B. Smith, a character actor and prolific TV writer. The original writers of Indian Uprising, Richard Schayer and Kenneth Garnett, get a story credit here. William Whitney was brought in to direct. William Whitney was one of the best directors at Republic Pictures, making serials like The Adventures of Captain Marvel and the Roy Rogers westerns of the late 40s and early 50s. He's recognized today as a master of low-budget filmmaking and a true innovator in how action is depicted in the movies. Whitney's tight, frank approach to action and violence was well suited to the darker tone of the westerns of the early 60s. He would stay with Admiral Productions to direct their 2 later Murphy films, too. The director of photography was Arch Dazelle, who had shot Roger Corman's Little Shop of Horrors and Tower of London, and lots of TV. For instance, he would shoot over 100 episodes of Mr. Ed. The most decorated soldier of World War II, Audie Murphy was brought to Hollywood by James Cagney and eventually signed by Universal International. He made a string of successful middle-budgeted westerns, along with a few bigger pictures like The Red Badge of Courage, To Hell and Back, based on his autobiography, Night Passage, co-starring James Stewart, and The Unforgiven with Burt Lancaster and Audrey Hepburn. Murphy became a better, more confident actor as he went along. He's really excellent in The Unforgiven. He's quite good here, too, as an Indian-hating cavalry officer who has a change of heart when he meets a half-breed missionary played by Linda Lawson. There are solid performances from the entire cast, many of them veterans at this type of thing. Linda Lawson only made a handful of features, but she was very busy on TV in the 50s and 60s. Michael Dante had already appeared in Fort Dobbs, Bud Bedeker's Westbound, Kid Galahad, and Sam Fuller's The Naked Kiss. He'd be back with Murphy and Whitney for Arizona Raiders. Dante stayed busy on TV from the 50s through the 2000s. By the way, he also played minor league baseball for the Washington Senators before he got into the movies. L.Q. Jones' first film was Battle Cry in 1955. By the time he played a despicable miner here in Apache Rifles, he'd appeared with Randolph Scott in Bud Bedeker's Buchanan Rides Alone, and was already a member of Sam Peckinpah's stock company. A performer in both classic and revisionist westerns, Jones would go on to appear in pictures like The Wild Bunch, Nevada Smith, Hang 'em High, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, and Casino. He wrote and directed and played a small part in the cult film A Boy and His Dog. Also in the cast are familiar faces like Ken Lynch, John Archer, Joe Vitale, and Hugh Sanders. Principal photography for Apache Rifles began on May 12, 1964, in the Mojave Desert. Some scenes were shot at Bronson Canyon in Griffith Park and a bit in the Alabama hills. Apache Rifles opened in theaters in October of 1964 in Denver and LA, and rode into New York City in November. About the same time Apache Rifles was playing theaters in the U.S., a new Western called A Fistful of Dollars was playing over in Italy. Audie Murphy was supposedly one of several American actors offered the lead in A Fistful of Dollars before it made its way to Clint Eastwood. A Fistful of Dollars would make its way to the United States in a couple years, and pictures like Apache Rifles, short, tough American westerns created by seasoned professionals, would soon become almost extinct. Audie Murphy was killed in a plane crash in 1971. The kind of westerns he made, pictures like this one, were already gone, waiting to be rediscovered and reappraised decades later.